Building influence is something anyone can learn. It's an investment you can make in yourself, and it can hold the keys to achieving your dreams and having the life and impact you want to have. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan. I've learned a lot over 3 decades about building and sustaining influence and how using it and using it effectively can make a big difference in your life and career. Here on She Said podcast, we're digging into the different dimensions that help us build and sustain influence. If you thought being an influencer was just for social media, think again. Whether you're starting a business, raising money for a cause, negotiating a promotion, running your household, or trying to connect with those who don't share your views, understanding and using the different dimensions of influence will increase your chances of success, whatever your goals may be. Listening to She Said podcast is a smart, efficient investment you can make in you. I'm really glad you're here, and I'm excited we're on this journey together. Hey friend, welcome to She Said podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so grateful for your continued feedback and that so many of you are finding this podcast to be a great investment in yourself. That really is the goal after all. This week, we're continuing our special collaboration series with the Southern Cootery. Over the past few weeks, I've showcased 3 different women, all founders, who not only embody the spirit of what makes the Southern Sea so special, but who also reinforce one of our core values here at She Said podcast, paying it forward. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, you already know that my focus is on crowdsourcing some of the best advice and perspective on career and life, and then sharing it in a way that hopefully is helpful, inspiring, and motivating, but most of all, is about you. If you're joining me here at She Said podcast for the first time and you're looking to learn more about the Southern Cootery, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode 187, and also be sure to go back and check out the conversations in our collaborative series thus far. We've had fashion designer Leela Rose, business coach and author Sally Holder, and jewelry designer Mignon Gavigan. These women not only share incredible perspective, but they also bring to life the power of what happens when we collaborate and when we proactively seek inspiration and when we share what we know in an effort to empower someone else. That, friend, really is the magic of tapping into a network that helps support your goals and dreams. This week's guest builds on all that great advice and perspective, and she really embodies, I think, in such a unique way, the concept of growing and evolving in our careers and lives. That, by the way, happens to be the theme of this year's collaboration with the Southern Sea. Molly Fienning is the CEO of Charleston, South Carolina-based Red Clay Hot Sauce. Interestingly, she actually comes to the company not as a lifelong fan of hot sauce, but rather by way of Babiators, a baby sunglasses company that she co-founded with her husband and another couple, and that they grew to tremendous success. Now, these companies, Red Clay, Hot Sauce, and Babiators, are really nothing alike. And that's one of the aspects of Molly's story that I personally like so much, and I think you will too. It's a great reminder that sometimes the connective dots in our journeys aren't always obvious in the beginning, but actually they make a great deal of sense upon reflection after we've taken the leap. Now, there's a lot packed into this episode with Molly, and she is incredibly smart and thoughtful about how she thinks about her career journey. One of the topics we dig into is around developing and growing your network as you evolve and grow. If you're a regular listener of She Said podcast, you'll recall that we did a deep dive on this topic in episode 184. I also especially love how Molly talks about goal setting and why her approach is oriented more toward those little habits that you can adopt every single day to actually help you make progress as you close in on bigger goals. Now, because our focus at She Said podcast is around the things we can do to invest in ourselves, to build and grow our influence, I think Molly's perspective on making space every day to reflect and gain perspective is especially valuable. It's also what helps her ride out the chaos and uncertainty that comes with being an entrepreneur and now a CEO. But it also works no matter what your career or life journey may look like. Friend, I think you'll find much to love in this conversation. Plus, Molly shares her advice on which red clay hot sauce products are best for the most amazing spicy margarita. Now, personally, I suggest pairing her suggestions with Inspiro tequila. If you missed Inspiro's founder, Mara Smith, who joined me in episode 179, I've included a link in the show notes, so be sure to check her out as well. But for now, here is my conversation with the fabulous Molly Fienning. Molly, welcome to She Said, She Said.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so happy to have you and so excited to jump into your story. So, first question: how does somebody who was originally interested in pursuing a career in military intelligence and technology and who didn't, as I'm told, really like hot sauce,
hmm
end up running a hot sauce company?
And that is a great question. I still question it myself sometimes. But I think the first and foremost love, really, my childhood dream was to either be a spy or a wizard, and I did not have magical powers, sadly. So was pursuing, worked in computer science and technology studied it, and then worked after college, and was waiting on clearance to do something more kind of confidential intelligence in DC. And that's when I reconnected with my husband, who is a
Mhm.
fighter pilot for the Marine Corps. And he was up in DC for a weekend. And 4 months later, I was a military fiance in rural Mississippi. And for me, that was the moment, that was the opportunity, our love, this life together. I knew I could do whatever I wanted career wise, at the right time, but did not know if another love like that would, ever come along. And
Yeah.
so left the opportunity to join intelligence and moved to Mississippi. And I knew at that point we would be, relocating every 6 to 18 months. I needed to do something that I could take with me work wise, because
Mhm.
there were not corporate ladders to sort of grow that I had done prior. So started investing in commercial real estate because that's my father's business and I knew it. And it was great passive income, but not really my passion and my heart. And my first product-based business is a company called Babiators, children's sunglasses, aviator sunglasses for babies and kids. And that's where I cut my teeth as sort of CEO and building a product-based business. But the way I ended up CEO of Red Clay is I literally was a client at the Oyster Bar where my partner, Chef Jeff Ryan, was executive chef. And the bartender said, "You have to have this special hot sauce if you're ordering oysters." Our chef chose this specific pepper to pair with the oyster and barrel ages it so it's balanced and delicious. And I tried it and turned to my husband. I'm like, "This is the best thing I've ever had." And I'm not even a hot sauce fan. This is the best thing I've ever had. 2 weeks later, we invested and we're silent money for 4 years. And in 2018, I stepped in as CEO to play an active role to scale it nationally.
Amazing. Okay, let's back way, way up
My
because I have
story in a nutshell, Laura.
yeah, exactly. Lots and lots of questions. So, Babiators is such an interesting idea. I'd love for you to tell the story about why baby sunglasses. And also, I want to make sure we talk about the fact that these two businesses are incredibly different businesses.
There.
I think most people, when you think about serial entrepreneurs, oftentimes there's a more obvious thread. Maybe there's a thread there, but it's not obvious to me, and I suspect people listening.
Sure.
So let's start with Babiators and how you got started there, and then let's talk about kind of the evolution in your entrepreneurship journey.
Sure. So we started Babiators. My husband and I started it with another couple, two friends from college, Carolyn and Matthew Gard. They were both in Atlanta, Emory Business School grads who had worked in consulting after business school and were
Mm.
flying all over the country and didn't really, newly married, didn't get to spend that much time together. And we'd always talked about wanting to do something entrepreneurial together. And when Ted was on a deployment, or sort of what they call a det in the military, which is a shorter training trip on the way to a deployment, the tradition is all the families wait outside on the flight line as the jets fly in, and they taxi up to the family, and then they pop the top of the jet, and all the kids get to run up and see their moms and their dads, and it's a really sweet military moment tradition. And this particular day was very sunny, and I'm with the, we're newly married, no babies yet, but I'm looking at my friends' kids who are squinting in the sky saying, I can't see the planes. Where's daddy? Where's mommy? And we all had our sunglasses on. And the military actually issues aviators to the pilots to protect their eyes in the sky. And so I said this to my husband, how ironic it was that the aviators kids, didn't have aviators. And he said, well, we should make them and call them Babiators. And I did just that. When he said that, I started laughing when he said the name, super cute. Giggled a little, and then we had mentioned it kind of over dinner a few weeks later to the guards on a little double date, and they said, being the consultants that they are, we're like, well, let's do a market analysis, let's do a survey and see, that's a cute name, we could get a cute brand going, but what is the need in the market? And we spent a few months really interviewing a bunch of moms and dads about what they like about kids sunglasses, what they like about the price point, about the style, about the colorway, about the functionality. And we learned some really interesting things and used that survey data to build our brand. And we relaunched about, kind of 6 or 9 months later with 8 SKUs, 4 colorways.
Mhm. And the company was a huge success, but at what point did you know you had really hit on something that was going to resonate with people?
Kind of 3 pivotal moments growing in this business where it's like, okay, we're on to something here. The first was very, very early on. And another of our college friends was my husband's roommate, was the co-founder of Warby Parker, Dave
Ah.
Gilboa. And he started Warby about a year and a half or 2 years ahead of us. And so we called him and asked him, you're disrupting the optical industry. We're making baby shades, very different. But what did you learn doing this that you could kind of help and give a little tip or sort of advice? And he suggested, put all your marketing dollars and make sure there is paid PR, earned media to get the buzz of the brand out there. Otherwise, no one's going to find out about how great it is. And so we made sure we had that PR partner. And in a few weeks, maybe a month or two, we got a big hit in Newsweek, when it used to be a magazine. It was one of the last issues, where they listed us in a roundup of most essentials for the summer for your kid. And after that, we got a lot of stores reaching out to buy us. And so we pivoted from this direct to consumer only model to, these boutiques all over the country want to pick up Babiators. That allowed us to think about the business a little differently. And then we were pregnant when we launched. Our Sawyer, our son, is now 10. And I remember after we had him, in the middle of the night, I couldn't get back to bed at the hospital, and I was reading Us Weekly and turned to a spread of Mariah Carey's twins in the nursery. And the boy twin is sitting up in his nursery with a plush guitar, wearing our Babiators, and it
Oh my gosh.
the shades in the magazine. And I started just jumping up and down and screaming on the hospital bed. My husband's in the air mattress next to me and is like, "What happened to the baby? What's going on?" And I'm like, "We're in Us Weekly. We're in Us Weekly." And that, to me, as somebody who grew up reading Us Weekly, my fun little vice on airplanes and stuff like that, it was so fun. And I was like, we've made it. We are in Us Weekly. I'm done. I'm tired. So that was a fun PR moment for sure.
Were you ready for that particular moment? I mean, at the point in which you guys kind of exploded, had you prepared? I mean, this may sound like a strange question, but had you prepared for that, or did you know this moment was coming? You sort of, I mean, obviously you hope for that, but were you ready? And were you able to keep pace with the growth? I think is the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. My partners, Carolyn is the really sort of functioned as the COO and still does to this day, but the team really runs the business day to day. But she early days was all ops. She's very wonderfully kind of conservative and thoughtful, and so stock really has never been a big pain point for us. It might get delayed in customs, or we might kind of struggle a little bit, but for us, we've always had something to sell, and because our SKU sizes are so few, there's 0 to 2 and 3 to 5 years at the time. We never had like a big out of stock issue per se. I remember though, and I think one of the things I've learned in entrepreneurship now, doing this for 11 years, you never are ever prepared, right? No one is ever prepared. And if people who pretend think they're prepared are not prepared, or they're pretending.
And then they have COVID, right?
Exactly. And so you just basically, I think about, another really pivotal moment in the business. The following year, we ended up on Ellen for the Mother's Day giveaway, which was our first biggest day of the history, Babiators. And that was probably a year and a half in. And Nick Cannon, Mariah Carey's husband, gets up and is being interviewed, and she's like, "So I hear your child likes baby sunglasses," and he's like, "Yeah, these cool ones. They're called Babiators." She's like, "Well, they're safe and they're awesome and durable and super cute. We're going to give all the moms here in the room, a selection of Babiators." And then cuts to commercial, and everyone's screaming, "Yay, this is so fun!" And instantly, our site shuts down. Because everyone that cuts to commercial, all of America on the East Coast goes to Babiators.com, and it shuts down. And so we're watching just like, everyone going to a broken link, and we're calling each other, and we're crying, and we're screaming, and we don't know what's happening. We're calling that point, it was pre-Shopify. So our server, the site, the data server that held the site was a different person than the data who made the site. It was all very, sort of segregated into these different tech pieces. And it was the worst, but also the best. It was the best attempt, the worst attempt. And then we got the site back up maybe 15 minutes later, only to have it crash the following hour on the different time zone central when she announced it. And then it crashed 4 times that day for every time Ellen aired the show. And we just at that point started laughing, and we were like, okay, this is wonderful. This is also exactly like the perils of small business as you grow and scale.
So what did you do as a result of that? How did you change the platform and the technology behind it to sort of anticipate something like that happening in the future?
Anytime we knew about a TV hit in advance, we really gave ample notice to the data server team beforehand, and made sure we had reserved lots of kind of storage space for the site. So kind of prepping on the infrastructure tech side for sure. I would say, since then, with modern technologies, like things like Shopify, which is one, kind of out of the box solution that hosts the site and the server space, but also does the checkout and kind of the payment processing for you and all of that. That has sort of made that issue a little less relevant, because they have all the server space that they can kind of scale up and down and reallot as needed. But certainly I would recommend, if you do know you're going to be on a major TV program like, Today's Show or Good Morning America, there's a lot of eyeballs, giving your developer a heads up in advance so that they can shore up what they need to shore up to make sure the site stays live.
Yeah. How valuable was your background or your educational background, at least in technology? Because I'm not aware, you didn't necessarily work in technology after college. You were planning to, and your life took a different pivot. But how valuable was that background in terms of that piece of the business?
Yeah, and I did. So when I graduated Harvard, I went to IBM for a year and worked in the global services division doing tech strategy consulting, and then went back to Harvard to work at a think tank for 2 years. So I did 3 years of actual tech job work, but I would say for that, and also undergraduate, I studied engineering and computer science. Harvard was very smart at not focusing so much on becoming masters of the specific language, knowing that whatever language you learn in coding is probably going to be obsolete pretty quickly as things evolve, but instead more about thinking the algorithmic problem solving pseudocode mindset, where you say, okay, we have this big pyramid we want to build. How do you break it down into piece by piece and then stack the pieces in such a way that it builds up to what you need to build? And so for me, entrepreneurship and growing a business is the same thing. If you think, if
Hmm.
you look at a $10 million business or a $50 million business, you think, I could never do that. How did they do that? And if you look at a big pyramid, how did they build that? But if you think about breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, what is the next best step you can take today to start building that, moving towards in that direction towards your big business goal, whether it is a dollar amount, whether it is a number of stores, whether it is a certain press moment you want to have, and doing the work, showing up every day, perseverance and consistency over time. That's really kind of what I learned from tech, studying tech at Harvard. The problem solving mentality more than any one specific technical skill.
I love that. I mean, it's so applicable no matter which direction you're ultimately going in. That's incredibly good advice. Okay, one thing I'd love to go back to is you started Babiators with another couple. So there were four of you essentially who were in decision-making roles. You were partners. Talk about advice you have for picking good partners.
It is so important. It's going into business with somebody, having a business partner is as important as a marriage. It is a business marriage. So choosing somebody, number one, that you work well with, your energy vibes with them. Number two, your skill sets complement their skill sets. If you both are super, brand focused and love marketing and love PR, but don't like the financial side or don't like the ops side, you both are going to be constantly kind of fighting over what energizes you, and
Mm.
also kind of fighting to push off the things that de-energize you. So finding a partner who does something or enjoys a different part of the business where you can each have kind of your own domain has been very helpful on both of my businesses, I would say. And then in addition to that, you want to have a lawyer draft a really elaborate, thoughtful operating agreement, which is basically like a prenuptial agreement for a business. And it says, in this case, this is what we agreed to. In the case we need to raise money, this is what we agreed to. In the case we need to, one person gives money and the other person doesn't, this is what we agreed to. In the case we both want to sell, in the case one person wants to sell and the one person doesn't, in the case, and a lawyer can ask all those different questions that you might not even think of now when it's the early days honeymoon period. We have a great idea. We have a great brand name. I love our website. Like those are still these like goo goo gaga honeymoony days, but you need to think about how you will handle yourselves together, how you agree to handle yourselves when the rainy days come, because they will come at some point. And so I would say those three things, someone you enjoy spending time with because you're going to know them like family, like siblings. You're going to spend lots of time with them. Someone you complement your skill sets, and then operating agreement.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about red clay hot sauce and the sort of connective tissue, to the extent that there is any, between Babiators and red clay. So let's talk about the pivot that you made from Babiators, and you're still involved in as an investor with Babiators, yes?
Yes. So the four of us still own it. I want to say maybe 95% or 94%. We've given a small percentage to sort of the vesting pool for board advisors and team members and such.
Mhm.
But and we've done the same thing with Red Clay. I really believe in like wanting to give your team a piece of the pie, so it feels like they have an owner's mindset and a commitment to the journey and excitement to grow and scale. And if the goal is to eventually sell the business. Um, I, but we've never taken outside capital with Babiators. Um, and so we at this point kind of advise. The team runs it day to day, and I probably spend a few hours a month on it max. My partners might spend a few more hours than I do at this point, but it's very much all four of us are more advisory co-CEOs than active in the day to day.
So making the pivot, where did the opportunity come for red clay hot sauce, and when did you sort of know, okay, this is what I need to do next? Because it's not, for most people looking at this, it's not necessarily a logical progression, or maybe it is.
No, I mean, there are similarities, but they are very different categories. And
Yeah.
I had to learn grocery as a business and food product as a business from the ground up in the way I had to learn about building Babiators from the ground up. Where I want to say probably 8 years into Babiators, we were a $6 million business at that point. It's a really strong team, and I found myself first of all missing those early days, the newborn business days. What is the logo? What is the color palette? What is the font selection? Just big picture stuff.
Mhm.
Also, I found I was getting in the weeds where I really wanted my team to be able to run. So looking over my team members' caption of the Instagram post that day, what's the caption? Things I don't need to be spending my time on. Things that
Right.
makes them feel bad that I'm wanting to be involved because they want to be able to go do their job without me checking in. And I noticed that about myself, where I wanted to be back involved, but we had this great team doing it. And so, in addition to that, I read an article about Sir Kensington's ketchup and how it sold for an insane multiple. It's a private number, so these are not exact. I don't know what the exact figures, but people say 17-ish, 18-ish million for 140-ish million. So on 17 million gross revenue, it sold to Unilever for 140 million. That is a multiple that we would never see in kids retail. And I called my
Mm.
friend in condiments who owns a keto paleo sauce company, and I was like, "Is this legit?" And he's like, "Yes. You have these big behemoth Kraft Heinz, Kellogg, McCormick. They don't internally R&D. The way they expand a new product category is through acquisition, so they pay a frothy multiple." And I was like, well, I'm spending my time in the wrong category if that is the case. And also, I saw what Sir Kensington's was to ketchup, old school ketchup brands,
Uh-huh.
thoughtfully crafted, higher quality ingredients, beautiful branding, millennial consumer. Red
Right.
Clay was building locally the same exact attributes, unique differentiators in hot sauce. And so
Fascinating.
Jeff, my partner, had sort of built this beautiful craft hot sauce, well loved Charleston favorite, and it was plateauing at about 70,000 in revenue, as like on the right restaurant tables and some loyal fans
Mhm.
locally. But the website was not particularly functional, and it was, you were seeing kind of where that opportunity is, like the local Charleston hot sauce kind of was standing off. And so I drove up to Greenville where he was living at the time and pitched him on sort of helping scale it nationally. And he was like, "Great, let's do this." And I took a little more ownership and rebranded the website, rebranded the labeling, and 3 or 4 months later, we relaunched Red Clay to scale it to the rest of the country.
Amazing. That's amazing. Okay, let's talk specifically about the attributes of red clay hot sauce because there are some things that are very unique about the processing compared to other types of hot sauces.
Mhm.
I am certainly not an expert on hot sauce,
I
at
love
least until doing the research
it.
for this interview.
You will be by the end of this, Laura.
So you can quiz me if you'd like, but I'd rather you tell us
Yeah.
about what makes red clay hot sauce so unique.
So I think first and foremost, it being created by a fine dining chef. So my partner was, if you guys Charleston restaurants, he was chef at Fig, chef at The Ordinary, and chef at Leon's Oyster Bar. He's done stages at Blue Hill Stone Bar. So he comes from very James Beard restaurants, fine dining. And when he set out to make a beautiful hot sauce to pair with the local gorgeous oyster here in Charleston, and oyster is a big part of our culinary lifestyle and ecosystem here, he chose a pepper that wouldn't overpower and he was thoughtful about, okay, how do I take this beautiful Fresno pepper and I use old school cooking techniques to honor it. And so, you think about that first batch of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, from Italy or Spain or Greece. It's cold pressed, right? They don't heat the olives because when they do, you lose the flavor and the nuance, and
Right.
then the health benefits as well. And so he cold pressed our peppers, and aged them in bourbon barrels the way you would age grapes in oak barrels for that beautiful kind of fermented notes that are a little kind of more funky and umami flavor profile, and complex flavor than just a one note. This is hot, and then it disappears. And so our hot sauce is the only real living fermented hot sauce on the grocery shelf right now. So cold pressed and fermented. And then as a result, though, it's just all about, first and foremost, just a beautiful balanced sauce. And so as a chef, he thinks about bringing together sweet and salty and spice and heat and umami. Everything we make kind of brings together all those sort of chef tasting notes into one product. And so it elevates what you're eating, and it doesn't overpower it and just make it taste like heat, or taste like, you think about Cholula. Like, I love Cholula, but whatever you put on Cholula on, it just tastes like Cholula, you know? And so this, you know, when we get great press, you know, you've got Food and Wine magazine saying this is Tabasco of the 21st century, or New York Times reviewed it and said, I use this more as an ingredient in my cooking even than an after the fact condiment. So when I'm making stews or chilies, I use it to add depth of flavor and a little bit of heat and a little bit of umami. And then, yes, I might drizzle some on after, but it's really sort of a pantry staple than just a condiment at the end of the dish is made.
Yeah. Another piece or another product in your business line is the honey that grew as sort of almost a byproduct or an after product of the hot sauce. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so after we ferment and press the juice through, you're left with this fermented pepper mash. That's this beautiful 6 to 8 week fermented old mash. And you know, sustainability is a core value of Red Clay's. And so we didn't want to waste it. And so we tried to explore ways to utilize this byproduct of the sauce because it was a beautiful food product in of itself. And so we infuse it with apple cider vinegar. We mix it with apple cider vinegar and infuse it, fold it into raw wildflower honey. And that's how we came up with our spicy honeys. And then we dehydrate it down and put it into seasonings and spice blends. And that's how we came up with our drink salts and our spices. But hot honey, without kind of in parallel with all this, has become this huge growing food trend. And Mike's Hot Honey is sort of the first in the space. It's from a Brooklyn pizza joint. And for him, it's about just sort of the focus on pizza as an element and heat. And, you know, we come in as this more elevated second opportunity option, right behind the crest of the wave. That's like, all right, we're sourcing beautiful wildflower honey and we're keeping it raw, and it might be a little more expensive, but it's this delicious kind of, you can use it, you know, as an ingredient in beautiful cooking, and not just something that's going to be like, bam, like my food is, you know, very hot now.
Yeah. Which of your products of the salts and the honeys are your favorite for the spicy margarita? Me being a good Texas girl, at least a native Texas girl. What's your favorite sort of condiment for the spicy margarita?
I mean, I love the spicy margarita. So we have our spicy marg salt is, you know, as opposed to, you think about like prior to Red Clay doing these premium drink salts, what was out there in the market was that sombrero that's just salt, right?
Right.
And you have certain restaurants doing kind of more interesting drink salts in-house, but we were the first to sort of bring one to market, which was really exciting to actually create a category. You think about this beautiful tequila or mezcal, people are doing small batch, really elevated top shelf liquor. Now then you don't put like a crappy margarita mix or crappy salts with that. You know, you get something like fresh lime juice and do something, maybe a little agave, and then a beautiful drink rim. So we launched that during COVID, and within weeks became our #1 bestseller on our website, and still is today. So we're really excited about the Marg salt. I also really love our spicy everything but the bagel salt. I probably use that one the most in my cooking. It's got like poppy seeds and sesame seeds and garlic, and obviously our habanero pepper. But that is a really wonderful kind of functional seasoning blend that's really savory and delicious. I'll use it as like a crust for salmon. I'll use it over eggs or avocado toast or guacamole or something like that.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Absolutely amazing. I know everybody's mouth is watering at this point. So let's talk about maybe the concept of building and sustaining your network, because this conversation, Molly, as you know, is part of our collaborative series with the Southern Cootery. You and I are big, big fans of that group and of the amazing women, the business leaders and founders who make up that organization. But let's talk about maybe advice that you have for building and growing your network, especially as you grow and evolve in your career. And as you surround yourself with a great, ride or die team, but sometimes the people that have been with you since the very beginning may or may not be the people that you need to grow, especially if you, like in your case, are pivoting from one industry sector, if you will,
Mhm.
to another.
Totally.
So maybe talk about advice for that and keeping your network a vibrant, growing thing along with you.
It's so important. I feel like, it's very isolating being an entrepreneur, especially in early days when it might be just you or you and your partner, and you're working crazy hours, and no one really gets it except for other entrepreneurs, right? And so I believe you need really kind of two networks. I found personally, you need a network of people in it with you. You need the people who are like at the same stage in your business, maybe in your category, and maybe it's a complementing or a different category, but somebody who you can call and ask them thoughts on what's the best mail server to use, or ask them thoughts on what the fulfillment center is that they recommend, just things like that. So the day-to-day functioning of your business, also to just call and cry, or call and be
Mm.
like, I am so tired, and they are telling you to take a Wednesday off. Like, you need those people to lean on who get it. And so building kind of a group of people, whether it's formally, like you all kind of connect maybe in person or virtually, or it's just you have your own friends that you individually lean on. You also, I recommend, need a network of advisors, people who have done this before. So maybe they're 3, 5 years ahead of you, or maybe they've already sold the business, and and you need to ask them what happens in 6 months, or okay, I need to go raise capital. Do you have recommendations on people who have invested in my types of business before? Because your entrepreneurial peer friends might not be as far along and know those answers. So I really believe in stoking the sort of the fires of two networks, a kind of advisory
Mhm.
network and then a peer network. Um, and even, at some point as a business grows and you're hiring team, and now it's a team and not just you, the entrepreneur, you step into a CEO, or you transition to the CEO role. And that is a very different role as an entrepreneur. That is about people management and
Mm.
supporting your team, and not as much about the doing of the day to day. And most entrepreneurs, I know I did, struggle with that, because we are entrepreneurs because we like getting our hands dirty, and you have to step away from the work and let your team do it. And that is a growing pain. And so then there's a point where you need kind of a network of people who are CEOs, and you're talking about things like HR and how to hire somebody and how to fire somebody, and what percentage of stock to give them for this role, or well, what's the salary, and it's different questions. And your entrepreneurial friends may or may not have gone into that role, or not. So having a CEO network when you are when you step into that CEO seat.
Yeah. Do you, and this may be an unfair question, but I'm going to ask you anyway because I'm curious. Do you see yourself more as an entrepreneur or a CEO, or maybe as you think about your strengths, do you see your strengths as being stronger as an entrepreneur or stronger as a CEO?
That is a great question. I certainly, I think everything is about education, right?
Mm.
I think, when you have an idea and you're at the starting line of a business, nobody knows anything, right? And then as an entrepreneur, you build the skill sets, and you learn, and you ask questions, and you develop a comfort level, um, as an entrepreneur. And then you step into the CEO seat and you know nothing. And you have to then educate yourself and read books and make mistakes and hit the growing pains and get feedback and constructively apply that feedback. Um, and so for me, I've been an entrepreneur longer, so I'm probably better at that. Was co-CEO with Babiators, for that time, but really, all four of us just sort of played these entrepreneurial characters where there wasn't like one decision maker. And with Red Clay, I'm the CEO, and I can't rely, the team certainly helps, but and Jeff is, a wonderful partner, but it's sort of like he'll say, what do you want? What's your decision here? And I need to rely and stand in my own power. And so that, I identify as a CEO now more
Mhm.
than I do as an entrepreneur, but I would say I have more experience as an entrepreneur, and I am still a baby CEO. Our business with Red Clay, we just finished 2 million year for gross revenue for 2021, and our goal is 4.5 for 2022. And we are building this to 20 million to sell it for 100 million. That's our goal. And so
That's amazing.
I I acknowledge that I have a lot to learn still, and every year your business gets bigger, and when the team gets larger, you learn more. But when I say kind of what are you doing today,
Mhm.
your job, for me, it's more I'm the CEO than I am the entrepreneur.
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting. One of the things that you just said that I'd love for you to talk about for a minute is the uncertainty that's associated with entrepreneurship
Mhm.
and the fact that to really be successful in the role as entrepreneur, you have to embrace and be comfortable with being uncomfortable or with
100%.
tremendous uncertainty.
Totally.
Talk about do you and it seems like it's something that perhaps you thrive on. I don't know you that well, so I don't know, but as you talk about it, it feels like you kinda love the uncertainty, that challenge really gets you going. Maybe share any tips and perspectives for tools that you use, ways that you work to stay centered
Mhm.
so that the uncertainty doesn't knock you off track. Maybe just talk us through kind of dealing with that and knowing how to deal with kind of the ebb and flow of uncertainty.
No, that's such a good point. I feel like, again, for me, there's no one decision that makes or breaks a business. Entrepreneurship is a commitment to run the marathon, and it is about getting up every day, doing the work every day, putting one foot in front of the other, making the next baby business step, sending that next email, taking the next phone call, making the next one decision, putting out the fire that is there today. There's always a fire, and then going to bed and getting up, doing it again, and not quitting, and persevering when it's hard, and cutting your losses when you make a mistake, and pivoting the ship when you need to. And so 5, 10, 15 years later, you turn around and you've built this beautiful business and you don't even remember how you did it, right? So
Right.
the uncertainty is, you know, by nature, anyone who leaves a structured job for an unknown is a little more fan of risk. So entrepreneurs in general are a little bit more comfortable with risk, since they're leaving a potential salary, or they're um, putting money that might not go anywhere into their business. So there inherently is that personality connection. But I think you can de-risk by just knowing that there's no, or mentally know you're de-risking by knowing there's not one thing that's ever going to make or break. And things come up, problems happen, your business breaks at 1, 5, $10 million, and it's about how you handle that moment, and put out that next fire, and just sit in the difficulty and persevere. And in terms of how I do that, I go through phases where I do that very well, and then I go through phases when I don't do that very well, and I'm pushing myself too hard and not sleeping and overwhelmed. But I've built certain patterns in my day that help me achieve, the or sort of offset the uncertainty and the risk, and the extreme work. And that's the first of all, when I wake up. I'm very big on sort of bookends of the day with my children, because in the middle of the day, I might not be able to do pickup after school or whatever that is. And I'm not able to be room mom. And so I like, getting my kids breakfast, spending time with them in the morning and sitting down with them. And then once my husband takes them off to drop them at school, I'll make a cup of coffee and get back in bed. And before I look at my phone or my emails, I journal or meditate or pray, or you know read a book, or do something that, for me, to set the tone, my day, check in with myself before I let the world dictate kind of how I'm going to take on the day. And then at the end of the day, I do the opposite, where I like to go for a walk, and either between the boys' bedtimes or after they're both asleep, I'll go for a walk, or Ted might join me if they're still awake. We have a sitter there, and walk along the water and shut off work and kind of prepare for like unwinding. So those are my two sort of moments where I take to myself. I really believe in leaning on your girlfriends. I have found as a mom, having good girlfriends who get it, have a glass of wine with them, it saves me. Carving out time for dates with Ted, and also, again, having that network of peers who get it and being able to call a fellow entrepreneur or fellow CEO and be like, oh my gosh, I just got my term sheet. It's the valuation was less than I thought. What do I do? Well, just vent and or seek help. And so asking for help, leaning on people, and not isolating yourself, really.
Yeah. Are you a big personal goal setter? Do you start the beginning of the year with resolutions and goals and all that business, or do you sort of leave that for other people?
I'm not really big into the goal setting per se, other than the fact that I've never sold a business, and I think it's more like a fun bucket list moment where I want to go through the deal discussions, and I want to be in a boardroom, and I want to sell red clay, and that's just more like a life bucket list. The way I want to climb a mountain in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or whatever it is, Tetons. I was talking to Lila Rose about that at the Sea Summit. And then speaking about, your point about Sea Summit is accurate. Cherie and Whitney bring wonderful women together, wonderful women together every year. And I have watched networks build through year to year attendance in that. And so if you're a female sort of a creative entrepreneur looking for a network, that's a great place to start for sure. But in terms of goal setting.
Yeah.
So I just finished Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it reinforced to me kind of why I don't love goals and why I instead think more about processes. I always thought it was because of my tech background, where it's like, okay, you have to build the system that works, to get where you want. It's not about this lofty goal at the end of the road. It is about, what am I doing today to move in the direction that I want to move? And so what we do at Red Clay is, we're thinking about, you have this big goal number of 4 million or 4.5 million, and next year it's going to be 7 million or 8 million. Thinking about breaking that down as an example, month by month top line sales. Okay, so 4 million is, the year. What January's got to be 200 grand. February's got to be 400 grand. March has got to be 150 grand. And, kind of being thoughtful about that top line spend or top line trajectory, and then even drill down into channel. Okay, so we've got direct, we've got restaurants, we've got major grocery account. And so say, of the 200,000, 150 is going to come from grocery. 30 grand is going to come from our website, and 20 grand is going to come from Amazon. And then I'm able to give my team a blueprint. And so my head of ecom looks and says, okay, I'm looking at these big numbers, which are overwhelming. All I have to do is, if I focus on 30 grand for January, that means I need to call it 7 grand a week. That's $1,000 a day on the website. So what can she do? What steps can she take running our website to sort of work towards that $1,000 a day goal? And these are all fake numbers. But and then if we find we're not meeting them after the week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, let's pivot. Okay, let's readjust the budget. Let's bring down that goal. Can we meet it elsewhere, or should we bring down our top line revenue and grow a little more slowly, and be thoughtful about our growth? You don't want to just grow for growth's sake. You want it to be thoughtful. And so I think putting those processes and systems into place is more important for me than goal setting. It also empowers the team to just attack a problem more effectively.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. Okay, last question. If you could go back and give maybe 22-year-old Molly a single piece of advice, a life hack, maybe a mantra, what would you tell her?
Oh gosh. I feel like enjoying the present moment, you know? I think so much of what we do today and what you do at 22, or when you're young and you're looking, what's that next thing? Okay, I got into high school. Now I'm going to college. Okay, I got to college. Where am I going to go work? You're futurizing, and you never really get to sit and be and enjoy the present. And there's every moment has such beauty and joy and love. And I think sometimes we, as a overperforming, overfunctioning society, tends to constantly be living in either the past or the present or the future and not sit in the beauty of the present. And I know I did that at 22. Like, I want to be a grown up and I want to go do this and I want to go, you know, do all these things that are great in the world. And I
In
think
such a hurry.
exactly. And so for me, I would really remind her that that's all coming and all you have is right now. And what can you do right now that makes you feel good? And that's spending time with your friends, and that's getting outside in nature, going for a walk, or having a beautiful meal, or a delicious glass of wine, or a great cup of coffee. Like, what are the things you're savoring in your day um, that make it a good one? Because that's really all we have right now.
Yeah, I love that. I loved this conversation. How fun to get to know you.
Thank you. I love getting to know you as well.
Hey, friend, thanks so much for joining us today for episode 187. To learn a bit more about Molly Fienning and Red Clay Hot Sauce Company, be sure to check the show notes for this episode. Remember, too, this conversation is part of our collaboration series with the Southern Cootery. I've included a link to the Southern Sea in the show notes as well. As always, friend, I'm so happy to have you here, and I hope you found this little investment of your time worthwhile. Until next week, take care. She Said podcast is a weekly production of She Said Media.